This is the newspaper headlines program, and as you know, it's a current affairs program to keep you abreast with events around the world. We'll be looking at the front pages of the newspapers, and 9 papers arrived early enough this morning. I am Phoebe Agemenhu, and you are welcome. We'll start with the front page of The Guardian. All right, Devon carriers await NCAA's clearance. We are checking compliance with safety guidelines, says regulator. Airlines will collapse without government palliative. New business model. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 6. You have the picture of the Port Harcourt airport. And the picture below says, birds will fly again, but it will never be as business as usual in Nigerians' airspace. Beside the picture, why I quit APC by Obaseki. Court sacks Oshomole. Deputy tenders resignation letter at word. Oshomole is afraid of educated people. Party mom, Mama welcomes development. VC refutes reports, affirms governor's certificates. No danger in PDP accepting Obaseki. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 6. Below that is the COVID-19 cases in Nigeria. Confirmed cases, 17,148. 455 deaths. And 5,623 discharged. All right, let's look at the story. All right, let's look at the stories. Confusion in APC camp over Edo 2020. Oshomole's suspension stands, appeal court affirms. Obaseki draws battle line, quits party. Other wealth is resignation. That's coming from his party, which is the APC. Benin court shifts suits on party primaries to Thursday. Don't surrender party to Oshomole. PGF boss warns. All right, the story, you can get the details on page 6. And there you have this picture of some personnel of the Federal Road Safety Commission, FRSC, evacuating the remains of a woman knocked down by a vehicle while crossing Nnamdi Azikiwe Expressway at Nikon Junction in Abuja on Tuesday. That's a pathetic one. The bottom strip stories now. Bandits killed 4 cops, 5 others in fresh Niger attacks. Senator, we are capable of dealing with the menace. Presidency. Page 5. On that same page, new electricity tariff regime begins in July. Minister. On page 14, only 15.9% Kano misery deaths COVID-19 related. And that's a report on page 14. While on 16, reduce expenditure on wasteful projects at Tiku urging federal government. Women's Association in Nigeria protest, seeks special court for rape cases. Page 8. The story below the masthead now. Federal government lists conditions for schools reopening. PEX post UTME fee at 2,000 naira. Cross River students get PPEs for trial school resumption. The details is on page 7. And lastly, on the Blueprint newspaper, it's page 23 and 24. It says maritime industry contributes only 2 trillion naira to GDP, Shippers Council. And Gap Foods completes 20 billion naira Kebbi tomato factory. And that is all from the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. This Day newspaper is next. But this time around, I'll start with the story just above the masthead. New electricity tariffs take effect in July, Minister insists. Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative says NNPC's publication of audited accounts signals more transparency. Page 5. And the story below the masthead, federal government rolls out guidelines for reopening of schools. Research shows UK drug reduces COVID-19 deaths. Lagos suspends plans to reopen worship centers. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 15. You have the leading story tagged APC in crisis. Obaseki resigns. Oshomole suspended. Ajimobi hospitalized. NWC divided. The kickers now. 14 back suspended chairman. 3 oppose. 3 neutral. Giadom claims chairmanship. Governor set to move in. 18 Edo local government chairman reaffirms support for governor's re-election bid. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 34. And then you have this picture tagged seeking presidential endorsement. From left to right, Ondo State Governor Mr. Rotimi Akeredolu and President Muhammadu Buhari during the presentation of the governor's nomination form for a second term bid to the president in Abuja yesterday. And the last story is on page 9. Industry leaders seek stimulus package for media. And that is all from This Day newspaper. Let's look at the front page of the Nigerian. Let's look at the front page of the Nigerian pilot right now. Page 5. My administration will sustain predecessors' development. And 5. Federal government gives conditions for reopening schools. NAV helicopter gunships kills scores of bandits in Katsina forest. 400 million naira theft. Army court martial sacks Major General. Atiku raises alarm over Nigerians' rising debt profile. Cautions federal government. On insecurity, be patient with my government. Buhari begs Nigerians. And on page 7, Nigerians to pay more for electricity in July. Federal government insists. Above the masthead. And this is coming from Atiku. He says Nigeria slipping into debt crisis. Says indiscriminate borrowing, robbery on future generations. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 4. On page on page 8, airline says we mistook Naira Marley for Fashola. On that same page, Army dismisses General Otiki over 400 million naira theft. Still on page 8, new electricity tariff regime starts in the leading story now. Apikoto Shomole, stop parading yourself as APC chair. Appeal. Uphold ex-Edo governor's suspension. Obaseki, deputy quit ruling party. PDP Guba ticket. You can get all these details on page 3. We have this picture we earlier saw on This Day newspaper. But the other picture is from Kalu. He says, I've forgiven everybody over my ordeal. Page 7. The bottom strip story is now, Lagos suspends churches and mosque reopening. Federal government lists conditions for resumption of schools and varsities. Page 4. And lastly on page 28, study links loneliness to likelihood of smoking. Study links loneliness to likelihood of smoking. Page 28. And so viewers, more stories on the dailies concerning Edo APC crisis. Please stay tuned as we observe this quick break. We shall be back.
How do I get tested? If you fall into any of these previously mentioned categories, remain in self-isolation and immediately call your state hotline or the NCDC toll-free line on the screen. The State Ministry of Health, supported by NCDC, will arrange for sample collection and transportation to the lab. Where can I get tested? There are several labs across Nigeria for the testing of COVID-19. And these labs are currently rapidly being expanded across the country to reduce turnaround time from when the samples are taken to when they are tested for the disease. And you can only get tested if you fit the criteria as previously mentioned and a sample has been collected for testing by the state team. What do I do if my COVID-19 test is positive? If your result is positive, please do not panic. Many people who have the infection will show mild symptoms and they can recover quickly with just supportive care. And most of the cases recorded till date in Nigeria are mild to moderate and are clinically stable. What do I do if my COVID-19 test is negative? If the result is negative, it means that you are not infected at the time your sample was taken. However, it is still possible to get infected. Therefore, you should continue to practice social distancing. Wash your hands with soap and running water all the time. Use alcohol-based hand rub frequently and clean your environment all the time. Should I come to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control to get tested? No. If you fall into any of these previously mentioned categories, please remain in self-isolation and and immediately call your state hotline or the NCDC toll-free line on the screen.
If you just joined us, you're watching the newspaper headlines live from the ACNN studios in Abuja. For more on our catch-up platforms, all show it on the screen. And do well to download the VM Africa app. Battle will deepen democracy. We are not a welfare's resignation party, while PDP says he soon join us. Lukman calls for caution, urges APC members to remain steadfast. Akeredolu presents nomination form to President Muhammadu Buhari, confident of re-election in Ondo governorship poll. Page 4. And that is the picture of the Ondo State Governor officially informed the President of his second-term bid at the Presidential Villa yesterday. Beside the picture, we have insecurity. Presidency knocks coalition of northern groups, says CNG feeding the media with garbage. NAF aircraft destroys bandits camp in Katsina. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 4. The bottom strip stories, I'll start with page 2. Health workers may join strike as federal government threatens to sack resident doctors. Lagos suspends reopening of worship centers. Page 34. And on page 18, COVID-19. Dexamethasone proves first life-saving drug. All right. On page 19, JAMB fixes 160 as cut-off mark for varsity admission. And on page 2, Imo Assembly shot as lawmaker test positive for coronavirus. The story below the masthead now. ANAP Foundation advocates behavioral change to tackle COVID-19. Page 4. And on page 23, Shippers Council considers 24-hour ports operation. Lastly, you have this from NCDC, the COVID-19 update as of June 16, 2020. Confirmed cases, 17,148. Discharged patients, 5,623. Number of deaths, 455. Up next is the People's Daily. All right, I'll start with the stories just below the masthead. There's a different kind of story here, and that is on Abba Kyari's burial. It says court hears suit against minister's aides, June 30. All right, let's go back to the familiar story, which is on Edo Guba. Obaseki, deputy governor, officially dump APC. Azapi court affirms Oshomole's suspension. The leading story is on coronavirus. Federal government releases guidelines for schools reopening. Page 5. Least hand washing, temperature checks, social distancing, and others. You have the big picture of the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, as he holds virtual meeting with the Newspapers Proprietors Association of Nigeria from his office in Abuja on Tuesday, the 16th of July, 2020. The bottom strip stories now, page 3, 7, and 10. JAMB pegs admission cut-off mark for universities at 160. Youth protest over incessant killings in northern Nigeria, and military airstrike kills several bandits, destroy camps in Katsina State. And that is all from the People's Daily. Let's look at the Nigerian Tribune now. I'd like to start with the story above the masthead. It's on COVID-19. It says UK scientists find dexamethasone drug as major breakthrough. That's good news. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 5. Federal government threatens to sack striking resident doctors as meeting ends in deadlock. Page 3. The leading story, APC. AP court affirms Oshomole's suspension. Obaseki, deputy, dump party. Court also withdraws Oshomole's rights, privileges, including his security details. And so we go to the second picture, which is that of the members of the coalition of Northern youths in protest against insecurity in the north. This was in Katsina just yesterday. All right, page 26 below the pictures now. Under Guba, I have received Buhari's blessing, says Akeredolu. Debt servicing crisis, Nigeria going in way of Sri Lanka, Maldives. That Maldives. That is coming from Atiku on page 27. 2019 election, short of transparency. EU report says, page 31. And on page 29, still on insecurity, protests rock Katsina, Niger, Mogunu attack. Red Cross evacuates 16 civilians to Maiduguri for surgical care. And finally, on Nigerian Tribune, pages 5 and 31, Lagos suspends reopening of churches and mosques. Stakeholders warn of risk in reopening Oyo schools. And lastly, we have the Business Day front page. It says Nigerians dissatisfied with government response in Nigeria. That is coming from the finance minister. And that is what the picture is about. The kickers, Collier, a unified exchange rate works for everyone. Experts urge implementation of bolder reforms. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 29. And finally, we have the inside stories on page 28. Edo 2020. Obaseki. Shaibu dump APC to press on with fight against godfathers. And how Nigeria's power sector bleeds over 40 billion naira monthly. And that is all from the Business Day newspaper. And so that's the much we could take on the program this morning. We want to thank you so much for watching. And may I remind you that we can only win the victory over the world by means of our faith. And who can defeat the world? Only the person who believes that Jesus is the Son of God. Do you believe that? Do you have faith in him? The only way to have this long sought after victory is by loving God and obeying his commands. For in them is the very power of God that enables us to overcome this evil world. Friday is the next